Looks like we are going. Welcome to the Adobe Premiere Pro basic class. We're just going to go over just the basics, get a little more intermediate as far as sound, because you want to learn a little bit more about sound, and then color correction. So just getting started. So before we even actually get into Premiere Pro, we want to talk about file organization. So we want to make sure all of our files are in the same spot, or in the same folder, so that we don't lose any of our footage. So say you bring in a file from your downloads folder, and then you like change computers that you're working on, that file is going to become unlinked and say, where's it going? Because it's in your downloads folder. If you create a folder structure that has everything, you can just take that entire folder and then transfer it to different computers or anything like that. And you should be able to constantly access that information. And also, if you go from computer to computer, if you're like editing on a hard drive, all of your footage will be there and you won't have to go find it in a different location.
So that's like using it without the cloud.
Yes. If you are using the same computer, it doesn't really matter. But I like to keep everything together just so I don't lose anything. Because again, say I downloaded something and I dragged it right into my Premiere project from that downloads folder, and then I'm like running out of space on my computer and I delete my downloads, it's gone.
Yeah.
And it will unlink. So an example of how I use file management is up here. I have my Premiere class assets. You can name this like the name of your project. And then I have audio, which I've put all of my music sources that I might want to include. I have exports so that when I go to export it, it will always be there, like version 1, version 2, anything. I can always find it there. Footage is going to be anything I shot. Graphics or titles or logos or anything that I want to bring in there. And then project files is where we can save the actual file so we can access it later. So just doing it like this ensures that you're not losing anything from your project. Also, within project files, Premiere Pro saves everything, it autosaves. So when it autosaves, it's going to make more files so you can go back to it later, and it will save in that projects file. If you save it to like your desktop, you're going to get a whole bunch of files that Adobe is constantly just saving for you, and then it just gets messy. Okay, so when you first open Premiere Pro, you're going to be greeted with this opening page. Here, the only thing that we really need to do, we can access older files here, most recent files, but today we're going to make a new project, so we're going to go up to the blue new project file. Whoops. So here we want to title it in that little left-hand corner. So whoops, I lost my, let me re-screen share. You can just see me here.
Why is it a little different from window? It's like very small.
You can click full screen, so you can kind of double click the top of it and see if that works. Where did my screen share go? Sorry about that to the people online. Okay, we're back. Yes, so up in this corner, we want to label our project. I'm just going to label it practice. You can label it whatever you want and title it whatever you want. Next, we go to project location, which is right next to it. This is where we want to choose our location and choose that folder that we put on our desktop. On your computer, you also have a Premiere Pro Assets folder, so you can go ahead and save it in the same exact place that I'm saving it. Yes, which would be project files. And you hit choose.
Is the Premiere Pro access file is in the Premiere Pro folder?
Yes. Okay. And then once you're ready, you go down to this blue create button.
Got it.
and then you are prompted with this page.
Okay. And then, allow access files in your desktop folder?
Yes,
Allow.
yes. Okay, so one important thing is you should have a bunch of workspaces up here. If it doesn't pop up there, we want to go to this little button that has a blue circle or it just looks like a box. Up
You mean
here?
the upload button?
Yes, right next to the upload button. We want to click that and say, we want to go to show workspace tabs. And then we can take this little tiny line right here and expand it. So these are kind of the things we're going to flip back and forth to when we want to do color, when we want to look at effects, when we want to do audio, things like that.
Yeah.
But right now, let's go into the editing tab. This is my most used tab. And then you can see that you can import your media over here. This is going to be your media browser. And then we'll get a little bit more into what the other panels do.
Okay.
So there's a couple different ways that you can import things. You can Command I. You can drag files into it, or you can search for files on your actual computer. The easiest thing is to click and drag.
Click and drag.
So if we go into our Premiere Class Assets folder, and then we can highlight, it's not showing up on here, but we can highlight everything and then bring it into
How do you
that
do that?
folder.
What, can you describe the folder?
Yeah, so I'm highlighting audio exports, footage, graphics, Premiere files. We don't need the project files or the exports folder. So if you highlight the audio, the footage, and the GFX and drag it over.
I'm not seeing it.
Oh, let me.
It's kind of, you're,
Mine can't show my folder for some reason.
okay, okay, yeah, because it's black. I understand. So like this is not highlighted?
Oh, so go
This popped up like this when I opened it.
Okay, so let's go into our. Oh, jeez. Let's skip. There we go.
Oh, it's because it was a.
Yes. So what I did was just went to elegance top, and we're gonna just
Oh, okay.
one by one
Drag it.
put in these. You don't need your exports because it's just for your exports. You don't need your project files. Okay. So now that we have that, what's convenient about this is that we have, since we organized everything beforehand, we can just click and drag and it will upload our folders as we saved them.
Okay.
So that's nice organization. So we already did the organization part beforehand, and then we just click and drag and it's just organized already.
Okay.
If you didn't do that and you just like click and drag things, we have this little tiny bin folder. If you see it at the bottom, it looks like a little bin over here.
Yeah.
So it says new bin. If we click that, it'll create a new bin and we can say sound effects or something else. And then we can click and drag things into our folder. So right now my folder looks a little different than yours. Mine shows all of the folders. Down here in the left-hand corner, you can pick how you want that to show up.
Okay.
I like lists, so I can click lists if you like to see that, or like really huge, but I like lists.
I'm not a list person.
Oh yeah,
I
you like to
bigger.
you like to see that? Okay. Yeah, it's totally up to your preference. I always add a bin that is called sequences. So your sequences are your actual timeline projects. So they often take when you drag in footage onto your timeline, it's going to be named after whatever that footage is. You can change that name, but it gets kind of confusing when it has the same name as that. So I always put it in my sequence folder, and I'll show you that a little later, so it's less confusing. So now let's talk a little bit about what these four areas are. So we said that this is our media browser. This is our this is our source monitor. So it's going to show whatever is in your media browser. So
Okay,
if
so it's just previewing it, but
yes,
on the right, in the upper right-hand corner, that's where we're editing in.
yes. So if I click this, it's going to show me what is up here. It's not going to show me what's on my timeline. What this is our timeline. So I'm just clicking and dragging something over here to show you. This is showing me what's on my timeline. So these are things that I can edit, I can put effects on. This is just the preview and the original footage that I cannot edit until it is in my timeline.
Oh, okay.
So that is the difference. Just remember that this monitor is our program and project monitor. It's going to show what the timeline, it's just going to show what's below it. And this, our preview monitor, is also going to show what is below it.
That's cool.
Yes. So that's the easiest way to remember that. Now, when you're trying to figure out what part of the media you want, we can hit the play button here. We can also hit the play button here, or we can hit the space bar. So the space bar is play and pause.
Yeah,
That's the easiest way to just preview everything.
it's pretty universal. There's a lot of different programs.
Yeah,
Even YouTube, you can hit the space bar.
yeah. So that's easy to remember. There are also a lot of different keys that you can look into. If we go into, where is it?
Are the arrows frame by frame?
Yes, the arrows are frame by frame. Where I cannot find it. But there is a place where you can edit whatever you want the keys to do. Like for instance, the most common ones I'm using are J, K, and L. So that is like speeding it up. If I hit L, if I hit K, it pauses or goes back to normal. If I hit J, it's gonna go backwards. And I can hit K, whoop, or I can hit L as many times as I want. It'll go faster and faster. So it's kind of important to learn what buttons are for what. So just it makes it so much faster to edit than using your mouse. You can just do everything on your keyboard, which makes it really more efficient. I haven't learned them all, but once you learn them all, it's just muscle memory at that point.
What did you have keyboards on there?
Yes.
Keyboard, okay,
Yes. If we go up to edit, actually, this is what I was trying to find before. Where are you? Keyboard shortcuts is what I'm looking for, which I cannot find. It used to be in here. We can look up keyboard shortcuts. Oh, okay. Let's keyboard shortcut. Oh, they change it to the Premiere Pro.
Oh,
So you hit Premiere Pro and keyboard shortcuts. It's already open, so that's why mine is grayed out. This shows you all of the shortcuts, and you can even change any of the ones you want. Like um, if you want the razor tool to be blade, if you remember it as blade, you can change it to the B.
okay.
So you can edit any of these, but this is kind of how you can familiarize yourself with the different keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah.
So that's really convenient. So when it comes to editing, you can edit in a number of ways. If you want to edit in our preview monitor, you use the keys I and O. I for in, O for out. So say I don't want this entire thing of him typing, I can say I want from here to here.
Oh, wow.
And then from there, I can click and drag, and it will be in my project now.
So
Um,
faster than CapCut.
oh,
You
yeah.
gotta kind of like click and drag it.
In CapCut? Yeah, yeah. Also, you can use these buttons to insert things or overwrite things that you already have. I don't like to use those. I like to click and drag and put it where I want it because you can see if I hit insert, it's going to put it wherever my little cursor was.
So it'll cut it and
Yeah.
spread it and then put it in the middle.
Yes. So it either overrides things or it will just like put it in the middle, and maybe you don't want that. So I like to click and drag, and then if I want it here, I'll put it there.
How can you change the setting from overriding it or just cutting it, putting it in the middle?
You just have to move your little cursor to wherever you want to put it in.
Oh, okay.
So that's how you get over that. Also, if I'm clicking here, I will drag my video only, and you can see there's no audio. Or if I click here, I can drag my audio only.
What did you click to?
Do you see these little buttons, the film strip and then the audio?
Oh, that okay. Oh, but if you click the
If
so
I
that's how you do it separately.
Yes, if you do it separately, if you click and hold and drag it, it will only bring one of those. So if you don't want the audio from something, you only want the video, then you can just easily do that rather than having to bring it all in and then deleting whatever you didn't want.
Okay.
So it's a lot easier that way. Okay. So the media can be on different tracks, as I showed here. You can have as many tracks as you want. It will just keep growing and growing. What's interesting about this, though, is whatever is on top is going to show. So let me grab something different so it's a little less confusing. So if I grab this wide shot and let me just replace this keyboard shot, I'm going to get my wide shot showing rather than the keyboard that's below it.
Well, is that because it's higher, placed higher?
Yes. Yes. So it's like different tiers. Whatever's on top is going to show.
Oh, okay.
But that's different with audio. All the audio will play unless you mute a track over here. But all the audio you will hear. But only with the video, whatever's on top will show. So since this is on top, but there's still this keyboard under, it's not going to show until that ends.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yes, all the audio layers will be heard at all times. So we talked about kind of how to drag and drop from the source monitor. Next, another thing that you can do is you can cut things in your actual timeline. So since I clicked and dragged this entire piece of media in here, but say again, I only want a certain section. I'm gonna go over to our tools over here and select the razor tool. Or I can click the C on my keyboard, and you can see my cursor is now a little razor tool.
Oh, okay.
This allows me to cut something. It's going to cut the audio and the video since they're linked. And then I can cut another place. I go back to my cursor, select it, and hit the delete key.
Delete key. Okay.
So that's how you can cut things out within your media. Say I don't want the end of this as well. I can have my cursor, I can hold my cursor at the end so it makes this red arrow, and I can click and drag it in. So there's a couple different ways that you can get rid of media that's already on your timeline. You can click and drag this out if I cut too much. I can click and drag it in if I don't want all of that, or I can use my razor tool.
How do you spread it out so you can get it within the second or like half?
Oh yeah, so if I press, oh, excuse the doorbell. If I press the plus and minus keys on my keyboard, that will zoom me in.
Oh, to zoom in. Okay.
So if I'm zoomed in, I can literally drag it out frame by frame.
Frame by frame.
hmm If your minus and plus keys aren't working for some reason, you want to take this bar that's down here. You want to click a circle and drag it out
Okay.
or in to get closer or further away. So if you forget those in and out keys, you just want to use this little bar at the bottom.
Yeah, my plus and minus keys aren't working, but the circle is.
Yeah, sometimes they don't work. I'm not exactly sure how to enable that, but it might have been changed in your shortcut keys.
And then for the circles on the right, those is that to like kind of see the audio, the wavelengths?
So it's gonna do the same exact thing. Both of these
No, I mean
circles.
yeah, it does work. The one on the right right here, the circles on the vertical up and down ones to the right.
Oh, yes. These also do the same thing,
'Cause I can see the
depending on which way you.
So like if I wanted to like
You can zoom into that audio wave and see that. Yeah, we'll talk about some of the different ways that you can manipulate the volume as well. So we talked about a little bit about the sequences. So if we go over here, you can see that there's keyboard twice. That's because one is my actual video, and then the other is my sequence. So you can see, and people online, it's very hard to see because it's so small. You can see that one of them looks like your timeline with your cursor. That's how you know that it's the sequence. And we can right click and rename it if we want. Or what I just tend to do is click it and drag it into our sequences so I know that that is the difference. And it's important to know that because say I exit out of my timeline and I come back into my project and I'm like, oh no, like how do I get back to my sequence? We're just gonna double click our sequence and it should pop back up. This is also awesome because we can duplicate something and it'll make a copy of it, which is really convenient because say you're doing like a TV show and you have an opening and a closing credits, and that always stays the same, but you're in between like your interview or something or your video changes, you can just duplicate your project, delete the middle of it, put in the new middle, and you still have your intro or your theme song and your credits in there. So that's really awesome. So you can just duplicate it rather than having to do it all over again. And again, you can change the names of any of this by right-clicking and hitting rename. And then you can also duplicate it by right-clicking as well. All right. So basic terms for basic trimming terms, actually. So we have tail, which is the end of a clip. We have the head, which is the beginning of the clip. We have a hard cut, which is just going from one thing straight into the other. Other than that, you can have a wipe, you can have a fade. Those wouldn't be hard cuts, but hard cut is just it goes right into the next one. You can add things like effects. You can add a fade. That wouldn't be a hard cut. A hard cut is just a hard cut from one scene to the next. And then a J cut and L cuts, that has to do with audio. So right here is a perfect example of a J cut. So in this, if we had a clip here, and I'm just going to unlink this to delete our audio. Oops, that was the wrong thing. So I just unlinked my audio to my video. You do that by Command L or you right click and click unlink. Yes. So then if I delete the audio and I bring this audio over, and I'm actually going to change this because it gets a little confusing because I'm using the same footage all over again. But so this is my keyboard audio. Yes, but right here we have his face. So this keyboard audio is underneath this frame, so it doesn't match that audio, but this is a J cut because it looks like a J, and your audio from this clip is creeping into this clip. So if you think about when you hear like beach waves, before you see the beach scene. So, you have a close up on the actor's face and then you hear beach waves, even though they're not on the beach. And then the next scene, they're on the beach. So that's an example of a J cut when you hear the audio before you see the visual. An L cut is the exact opposite, where it's going to look like this, where your audio keeps going into the next scene. So again, you achieve this by unlinking audio from video. You can always relink them or group them together so that they stay exactly where they are. And again, that's right click and you can hit group or link. Group is for if I wanted to group audio and video that didn't originally come together,
Oh, okay.
I would hit group. And then since these ones already came together, that's the original audio, I would just relink it where it is. So those are some common trimming terms that you'll hear, and maybe and
I do
maybe
that,
it's
but
like
I don't know the terms.
yeah, and maybe it's like a creative way to enhance your footage. I really like J cuts, especially when you can hear the environment of something else that's coming in, and then you see it. I really like that in films. And then lastly, you can add markers to your footage by hitting the M key, and you see how this green thing popped up.
Yeah.
And I double click it, I can write notes like add graphic here. I can change the color to say like every time I need a graphic, it's going to be red. But you can do those all throughout by clicking where you want it and then clicking the M key, and you can add notes as like reminders of yourself of what you need to do or what you want to add or what you want to get rid of. And that's really convenient, obviously, if you're like coming back a couple days from your project and you forgot what you needed. So that's really convenient. So we can get into our effects, which is one of the workspace tabs up here. So if I click effects, we're gonna get this new effects tab over here. Mainly for, say, video transitions, you want to fade to black at the end of it. That's where these things are gonna be. You can see dissolve, you can do a wipe, you could do a zoom in. These, what you want to do is click. Let's say I want to dip to black. You click and drag that effect, and it's going to show up on the end because it's not going to fade to black in the middle. So it'll show up at the end. And you can see this little block that I just added shows my effect. And then if we play it, we'll see that it just faded to black. So that's really nice to add to the beginnings and the ends of your footage. And you'll see that it will always show up here. The transitions will always show up, but our effects will not show up. If I put, let's say, a blur, I use a blur a lot. If I put a blur on this footage, I clicked and dragged, but you can't see any visual cue that it's on there. How we affect that is I'm gonna.
Why is that?
Yeah, because you wanna see it, right? So in our effects control, this is where it shows up. So we see my blur here, and the reason why is because our transitions automatically do what they need to do. My blur doesn't do anything until I tell it to do something. So you see there's no blur on my footage, even though I just put it on there, because over here I have to put markers in or say how much blur I want. So a lot of the audio effects and the video effects, you have to manipulate them and tell it what to do.
Okay, so you have to tell it for the right or where it starts at and where it ends.
Yeah, so that's with markers. Telling it when to start and to end is with markers, which is this little like clock that is next to everything. So say I want it to start as 0, I'm gonna click that and it made a little diamond shape right here. So that is where my first key is, and then by the end of it, I want it to be super blurry. So now when I play it, it's going to gradually. That's a little too blurry. Let's do a little less so we can see it gradually blurring. So you can see that it's gradually blurring to get to where I set it for that next dot. And you can do that with any effect to make it gradual. But that's how you do it with keying. Yes. We can also do keying with scale and position. This has to do with if I want to zoom into something or zoom out. Say I have like a red background that I want on everything. You can do it with text as well. So say I want this to gradually grow. So I will go to the end of the clip and I want it to be, I want it to be at 100. So again, it's going to move as I do that.
So the red marker is where it begins?
Yes, so this is where it begins. You can do anything. If I want it to start here, I can do that and it won't start until later.
Those the diamonds that determine what text.
Yes, it's the diamonds that determine when it starts and when it ends.
Oh, okay.
And then also with rotation, say I want it to spin, I can click the dot on rotation, and then I can say I want it to end upside down.
Oh,
So now it's growing and spinning and becoming more blurry. So you can use the keys to manipulate it like that, which is really cool because you can move anything around.
yeah.
Yeah. So next, these are kind of things that you just want to explore and see what you like, see what you don't. There are a lot of different effects. I find that if there's something I'm thinking of that I want to do but I can't figure it out, I just go to YouTube. So rather than like playing with everything and seeing exactly
Yeah.
what it is, I can say, I want to do this. And that's what I figure out. I've been working with Premiere Pro for like a decade, and I still don't know what everything does. I'm still working with like the effects that I'm familiar with.
Are those like the basic effects? Because you can buy like packages.
Yeah, you can buy more effects and put them in here.
Third parties make effects for that will make.
Yes, so third parties do. You can also go on, I think, Envato Elements, things like that. You can do different templates for graphics. Like, say somebody made a template that's like just a cool, like intro graphic and it has everything moving and stuff. You can download those things, put them in here, and then just like edit it to add your own words or change the colors, things like that. So you don't actually have to make a motion graphic. You can install it into Premiere Pro, which is pretty convenient. So speaking of titles, there are a bunch of graphics already built in. So when we're in the effects tab, I just went to essential graphics up here. And you can see it has built-in graphics already for you to make it a little easier. They're pretty basic. So say I wanted a lower third, I click and I drag it into my project. And this is where you go up here. And if you don't see this, browse is where you find the graphics. Edit is when you edit your graphics. So
Click and drag the names in the editing screen.
these,
Yeah, you can move them around, right?
yes, you can move them anywhere you want. And then this is where, like I said before, you're going to go in and edit what you want it to say. You can change the font, you can change the position of anything. You can change how big or small it is. You can change the colors as well, adding a background or a shadow. And that is just kind of how you make it more creative. But there's a ton of different things in here. And then you can also go to Adobe Stock. You can buy things from Adobe Stock, or you can see what's free in there. But like this is an example of like a pre-built logo. You can put your logo in there and put your name.
Can I see that one?
So that's what this one looks like. So like it'd probably be really hard to make this or take a lot of time, but it's already in there.
It's already pre-built.
Yeah. So again, those can be really, really helpful. And again, with titles, you can go over to our effects, our effects controls over here. And again, you can make the text spin, you can make it fly in with the position and everything. So if I wanted my text to start off screen and then fly in, I can do that again with using position and scale and everything. So you can animate your text as well. You can make it spin, you can make it grow, things like that. Also, a lot of times I'll use that for credits.
Yeah.
So if I have my name, Austin, who also works here, and Drew, I can take that. Oh, I just deleted it. No, what happened? Oh, here it is. That's unfortunate. I don't know what's happening. I'm gonna do Command Z because that undoes anything that you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Important one.
Yep. So for this, I can change the position to start off screen this way, and then start off screen this way, and then grow, and then stop here. So it's really fast, but that's how you would kind of have moving credits going up your screen. So you can do a lot with position and scale, and again, it's just something you mess around with to animate and move things around, which is really cool. Oh, excuse the doorbell again. Yeah, busy day. So moving a little more, bell's still going off. Oh, still going. Edit it out. I could. Oh, somebody answered the door. So moving on to our audio tab, which is up here next to effects, which we were just in. This is where you get your essential sound. Oh my goodness.
That's why I use lab lights.
Yeah.
I wake up and block
Thank you. Oh. So when we go into our audio tab, we get this essential sound panel. So this is where you can decide if this is dialogue, music, sound effects, or ambience. So let's say this is dialogue. This is just a very basic and very easy way to edit your dialogue. We can get into a little more advanced things. But say you have a lot of like noise, maybe an air conditioner is going. I would use reduce noise. You don't want to crank it all the way up. It's going to distort your audio.
When I use those in like Filmora, and I haven't used it in CapCut, but it makes it sound like an echoey.
Yeah. So if it's sounding distorted, that means there's too much on it. So let's play this. You can hear it's kind of like took everything out basically. So I normally keep this around 1 or 2. I don't go past 5 no matter what. And you can hear it took out some of that noise. So if we listen to what it was before, you can really hear that AC. And then if I take it to maybe there, the AC is a lot lower. So that's to help take out the background noises. But again, don't crank it all the way up because it will distort things, make things sound echoey and things like that. I don't really use the de-hum and rumble much. I've never really seen much of an impact with those ones, but I do use reduce noise. And then clarity, if you want somebody's voice to come through, you can use that to make it sound more focused. But again, if you crank any of these up, it's going to distort things. And maybe that's what you want because you said that you wanted your voice to like change, but it normally doesn't sound that good. Yeah. Okay.
But AI, they have these programs now where like, they generated AI generated somebody's voice.
Yeah.
Like they do like Arnold Schwarzenegger, make it sound like he's talking.
Oh yeah, AI is getting a little crazy. You can definitely like type in some text and say like, make this an audio source. Yeah, that's crazy.
That's what I want to use.
Yeah, I think that the Adobe workshop that you're going to would really help with that,
Yep.
and maybe teaching you how to use AI within Adobe.
Yeah, hopefully they have.
So EQ, it really helps balance things. So if you want a subtle boost or vocal presence, I'm using vocal presence a lot. You can see this waveform that it makes. I don't have any voices to show you that, but vocal presence is really just an easy way to kind of separate the voice from the background noise.
In the background.
Mm-hmm.
What if like we're talking and then all of a sudden it's like you hear like maybe the door closed like and it's like a loud maybe spikes.
Yeah.
But I want to remove all the spikes from the audio. Like is there a way to do that?
Yeah, so the question was for online viewers, if there is a consistent noise that you want to get rid of in the background.
It's not that it's
Um,
consistent. It's just maybe
just a
every now and then like
okay,
you hear something like a spike. Maybe
yeah,
somebody is talking all of a sudden they get a little louder and then they go down.
okay,
So
yeah,
it kind of registers on the like on the volume bar. It's in the yellow or the red.
yeah. I can show you how to do that next, actually.
Okay.
So when a voice gets higher or something spikes it, one thing you can do if it's like a train or something you don't want in your audio, I would go into a dish audition. You can select that noise. If it's during like a quiet part, you can select that frequency and get rid of it for your whole audio. But if it's just an instance of helping the volume, if somebody starts like yelling or something, I'll show you how to do that. But lastly, this is you can manipulate the volume here by increasing it or decreasing it. And but the simplest way to increase and decrease your volume is using this little line that's in the middle of your volume. I will make it a little bigger so you can see. So you can see this white line. If you click it and drag it up or down, you can increase and decrease the volume.
Oh, that's it. That's just another way of increasing and decreasing the volume.
Yes. So with that, we also can get rid of those spikes. So you see this most of my audio is the same, but we do get this spike right here.
Yeah, that
And
that's
yeah,
pretty good.
and say I don't like that. We go over to our audio, and if you expand your audio, you double click in this negative space and it will expand, and you'll see this key. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna make little dots. If I click that, it made a little dot. Sorry for those online, it's very hard to see. Um, so if I make 3 dots, I can say this one I want to drag down, or if the volume gets really low all of a sudden here, I can just isolate that, and that's how I would get rid of the spikes.
Oh,
Or I would drag down just one piece of the audio.
so okay. So that's how you kind of manipulate the volume for that spike.
Yes. If it is an instance of like someone is speaking normally and then someone else, like if you're doing an interview or podcast, someone else is speaking very softly,
Yeah.
I would use my blade tool to cut that out. And then I would actually put the softer person on a different track so that when we go to our mixer, see, this one is on my track 1, this one is on my track 2. So this person who is speaking very lightly, I can just increase the entire track for
Okay.
that person. That takes a lot of work, but that's what I would do to separate someone who's speaking quieter rather than going through and cutting and increasing and increasing because that could take forever.
Yeah.
So I just put it on a different track entirely. And in our audio track mixer, I would increase their track.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah. Also, getting into a little more intermediate, if we go back to our effects and go into our audio effects, we can go into amplitude and compression. I was wrong. We go into filter and EQ, and we want the parametric equalizer. Again, I click and drag that onto a piece of footage. It doesn't show anything until we get to our effects control, and you can see all of these things that were just added. Now, in my parametric equalizer, if I hit edit, this is how you can really get into detail about the frequencies. So, say there's like a really harsh sound in your background. I would say decrease this low bar and try to get rid of it. Um, you can also increase frequencies and decrease them, and that could also make you have a different tone of voice.
Oh,
So if decrease it on um, this frequency, you might decrease someone's voice. Not decrease their voice, alter their voice so it sounds deeper. What's great about this is there are presets. So again, if I normally go to vocal enhancer and it already makes that kind of shape that's going to optimize my dialogue. And then again, I can go in and further manipulate how I want it to sound.
yeah.
But that's very helpful. Normally, it really helps with getting rid of like appliance sounds and everything. Also, we can do hard limiters. That's another way to decrease compressing. Sorry, compressing is a way to easily make sure things don't spike.
Yeah.
So, like with a hard limiter, think of it like limiting the volume that any of your audio can go.
Yeah, that's what I kind of, what is that called?
It's called a hard limiter.
Hard limiter. That's basically what I mean.
Yes, so that's an easy way to say like nothing at all can kind of go above this.
Yeah.
So when you're compressing anything, when you're compressing any sound, you can bring up the audio and or bring it down. So it's kind of putting it more in the middle area when you're compressing and making it more a little more even
Okay.
when you're adding any kind of compressor.
Yeah.
So again, this is kind of just like messing around with things, seeing what you like, seeing how you want it to sound. And using your amplitude and compression is a really good way to kind of play around with the different audio effects that you can do. And again, we just want to edit everything over here. See, this is a hard limiter. And what it's showing is the maximum amplitude. I don't want it to go past -20. Um, and you can do boosts. You can do look ahead times, like how it's kind of like a curve. If you think of a curve, how like slowly do you want it to start increasing or decreasing or affecting? How slowly do you want it to start affecting? And then release time is how long do you want the effect to start coming off of the audio?
Oh,
So it makes like a nice curve rather than making it very like stark and very hard and harsh.
oh,
So that's how we're gonna use a hard limiter. Okay. And then we talked about keyframing down here. That's a really easy way to do that. Now let's get a little more into color. Now at DCM, we teach DaVinci Resolve as well. DaVinci Resolve is um, way more advanced in color correction than Premiere Pro. So I definitely recommend that. Austin Anderson actually teaches a color correction class in Premiere Pro. Um, it can translate, or sorry, in DaVinci. It can translate to Premiere Pro. You can get a little more insight into how all of this works, but definitely this is, you can get basic, pretty good color correction here, but not as advanced as DaVinci. DaVinci is kind of like the leader in color correction right now.
how do you adjust the brightness of the footage?
Yeah, actually, so in basic color correction, and again, I was just in my audio. My audio was selected down here. So now I'm going to select the video because we are color correcting. And you can see how our color is grayed out when I'm on the audio, and it is um, active when I'm on the video. I'm actually going to do this one because we're already on it. These are in our basic color correction tab, which is the very first tab. Um, this has a lot to do with balancing the light. So tint and temperature are really good with for the white balance. We also have this dropper right here, and I can click something white in my footage, and it just balances the color for me.
Oh, wow.
So you can see that my temperature and tint changed a little bit, but say it's still too blue for me and I want to add some of that orange back in, I can always do that. So that's just a good basis on things. If I want to make my footage brighter, that would be I would use highlights and exposure. So exposure is going to do it's going to increase the exposure on all of the entire footage. Um, and you can see on my scopes on the left how that is moving up and down. So highlights are only going to affect the highlights. So it's a little better than just changing the exposure of the whole screen. And then we can also increase some shadows. That looks a little less natural, but highlights can definitely help you subtly make things brighter. hmm And then going into color wheels and match, we have these 3 wheels in here. I think that these are more used within color correction. You can increase or decrease shadows here, just like I told you. You can also say the shadows are tinted weirdly. Say they're tinted blue. I can come over to yellow and tint those yellow to be more balanced. Or say I just want everything to have this tint. I want all the shadows to have that tint. I can do that. And then I want all the highlights to be tinted green. So my shadows right now are going towards magenta, and then my highlights are going towards green. Midtones have a lot to do with skin color, but again, if you're tinting it, his skin color is not going to look natural, but we can increase that and decrease that as well. Curves, I think that's a little more advanced, but a lot of photographers use curves.
I've not experienced at all color grading. All I do is mess with the brightness.
Yeah.
Exposure.
So this also messes with the exposure, but again, can distort or make things look very weird. And then creative, you can input different LUTs or different looks that you like. Or there's a whole bunch of different things that we can add. Let's see, like that. I can add different looks if I want like a creative look in here. But mainly I'm in basic color correction and then colors and wheels. Basic is what we said, very basic. And if you're just using the white balance tool, it makes it convenient to have a good start, and then you can go from there. Now with scopes, over here we have a scope open. Scopes are really awesome for if you can't really tell what's going on, you can see if your footage is accurate with the scopes. So if I right click, I can open vector scope, histogram, parade, and waveform. With vector scope, we'll start because it's already open. This line that's right here is where all skin tones fall. So you can see right now his skin tone isn't reaching up to that line. So if I were to maybe add more orange, you can see that it's growing, but again, we're tinted very yellow. So let's add a little more magenta. Now so we're getting a like kind of C curve. We don't want things to look like that. Let me go to a different type of footage. Let's work with his hands. So again, that mouse is white, so I'm going to use that for my white balance. Oh, wrong piece of footage. Okay, so that lets me balance a little more. And then you can see right here that it's pretty much on that line. I can increase the exposure, and you can see how that line is growing in the correct direction. So we know that his skin tone is pretty accurate. Yeah, you want it to grow along this line. So that's what the vector scope is good for. Whoops, let me unselect these. RGB parade here shows the balance within the red, green, and blues in your picture. You want them pretty balanced right now. Right now, they are pretty balanced, but you also want to keep in mind that if you're in a lot of greenery, if you're in a green space, the green is going to be a little higher. Or if someone's wearing a bright red shirt, the red's going to be a little higher. You just kind of want to look at your image and kind of dissect it from there. If the red's higher and someone is wearing a really bright red shirt and really close to the camera, that's okay. That they're not even. Or if there's a lot of green, if you're in the forest or something and the green is a little higher, you can say, okay, well, that makes sense. I don't have to bring down the green because it's supposed to be there. And then we have waveform, which is over here. That has a lot to do with your exposure. So we want to keep the exposure above 0, but maybe below 100. So if we look over here, we're not above 100, which is great. We'll start losing pixels and it will be too bright. And then 100 or 0, I'm sorry, will just crush everything because it'll make everything dark. So right now, this is a pretty balanced exposure, but say I take the exposure and take it all the way down, you can see that it's way too dark and it's crushing everything, compressing your wavelength. So if I make sure that it doesn't go above 100 and it's kind of in the middle, that's going to be good exposure. So those are mainly the scopes that you want to use. And it's really good to become familiar with that so you can accurately color correct your image because sometimes our eyes think, okay, that looks good, but is it actually good? We don't know. Again, Austin Anderson teaches our Da Vinci color correcting class, and he really gets into how to use the scopes so you can correctly do that. And fun fact, Austin is colorblind. So he had to use the scopes. He had to learn the scopes to, he hates when I say that. He had to learn the scopes to figure out correct color balancing because he cannot see reds and browns or different shades.
And it comes out pretty good.
Yeah, he's really good at it. It comes out really well. And then, so we went over kind of the basics of how to put a project together, how to color correct, how to add effects and edit things. Now, say our project is done and we're ready to export. You can do Command M, or we can go over to File, Export. Whoops. I don't have anything highlighted on my timeline. That's why that was grayed out. I'm using the in and outs to highlight on my timeline what I want to export. So that, yes. So say using the in and out, using I and O. So if I want to just highlight something over here, I and O. But I want my timeline, or say I just want to export this part. This is so I can export different parts of my timeline. And then if I accidentally have a piece of footage all the way out here, it doesn't keep going to that. It's not black. And then I forgot about an image that I put out there. So I'm selecting the parts that I want to export. And again, you can go in super close and make sure that that whole thing is selected. Then we are going to go up to File, Export Media. This is where we can rename anything that we want to rename it. So again, this is my practice. So I'm renaming it that. And then we're going to use our exports folder. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so like, say I have something that's like 1080p.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that, but like I want to put it 720p.
Mm-hmm.
I want to put it on social media. Where do I go to change it from?
Oh, yeah. So the question was, how do I change the different frame rates and the different ways that the quality of the image that we are exporting? You can go down here and make it 720. Yes, so it's under preset. I normally keep it at match source, so we're matching our footage. But you can make it 4K. Most things, if you're putting it on the internet, it's going to compress that 4K and make it 1080p anyway. So that's just going to give you a bigger file and kind of a bigger headache. 1080p is the standard, and if you want to make it even smaller, even less quality, you can change it to 720 or 480.
How do I change it, the frame rate from 60 to 30?
So changing the frame rate, you would actually have to do in your sequence settings.
Oh, gotcha.
And I can show you how to do that really quickly. So if we click this little new item button right next to our bins, I can say I want a new sequence, and this is where I can select my sequence settings. So I can make it 24 frames per second, 25, 30, 50, 60,
Oh, okay.
depending on your footage. So you would start that at the very beginning.
At the beginning?
Yes.
So I have to do that beforehand.
Yes.
When I'm using Filmora or CapCut, I do that at the end.
Okay.
So it'll
Yeah.
it all.
So it's a little different here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, just like CapCut, we can. Oh, there's nothing selected there. Just like CapCut, you can change your settings, your format to be more compatible with where you're putting it. So YouTube or whatever. If somebody needs a specific file type.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, social media is like MPTV, I think is the best one.
Yes. So H.264 is standard. It's going to go anywhere. Yeah, so that can go on YouTube, that can go on social media, that can go on a DVD and play there. And then there are some other things here. I normally don't touch anything except for if I want captions. But normally this default is really good and it will go anywhere that you put it. Again, we want to change the location, so I'm going to click this blue hyperlink, and we conveniently made an exports folder. So I'm going to put it there in our folder so everything is together. I'm going to hit save, and then from there I will go down to the blue export and click export. If the file is
You can click that box in the lower right-hand corner to like open it. That way you don't have to search for it.
no, that's just telling you that when it popped up, it's just telling you that it's done.
Oh,
You will go to your folder if you want to view it. Also, say I have a project that's like 2 hours long and I have to edit other projects on Premiere Pro, and I don't want to kind of like have Premiere Pro just exporting it because I can't do anything with Premiere Pro when it's exporting. We can go up to File and why is that not? We can send it to Media Encoder. So that's sending it to another Adobe product to export it, so that it's not taking up my Premiere Pro and I can continue to work on Premiere Pro. Yes, so that's really convenient if you have a really long project and you still want to be able to access Premiere Pro and work on other files. You can also, within Media Encoder, you can also change the format. Say I got a really large file and I need to compress it to H.264. You can put it in Media Encoder and it will compress it. Or just change the format of it to whatever you want. Yeah, so Media Encoder is great. So those are the basics. Those are the basics of Premiere Pro. We have some more advanced classes, or I also teach the basics of Premiere Pro. I also have sessions where people can come in with their footage and edit things with my supervision and just kind of get advice on what you can do. Those are normally on Fridays from 2 to 4, every other Friday, the first and the third. But if anyone's interested in more classes or more knowledge on Premiere Pro, come on down to DCM and